Hi students, welcome to week 4 of your fashion writing course. And if it makes sense, I like to kind of record impromptu lessons as our week progresses with fashion news information, little tidbits that are relevant to our class, things that are happening in, the news, Fashion Week being a big one, so it's hard to kind of skip over that. And your discussion board this week relates to one of the bigger questions coming out of Fashion Week this season, which is in relation to the see now, buy now, see now, wear now movement, maybe, if you will, or trickling toward that kind of mentality for Fashion Week. So kind of just wanted to give you guys that information and then kind of do like a wrap of some of the things that I experienced during this past Fashion Week, kind of how you could think about those things and translate them into potential writing pieces. So just as a disclaimer, man, I am tired. Fashion Week is fun and exciting and sensory overload and quite a bit of work. So please excuse the bags under my eyes and a possible monotone sense to my voice because everything kind of gets put on hold and then, during the week, and then I crash at the end of it and I'm tired and still have a lot of catching up to do. That's kind of just how it goes, and I haven't really found in 13 years of covering Fashion Week a better way to go about it, except for just to kind of compartmentalize as much as you can the things that are due immediately that you have to deal with and things that can wait a little bit longer to address. So my best advice in that sense. And so it's kind of formed that this Fashion Week, there's two big kinds of shows that are happening. And so the one is what I mentioned before and that you guys will discuss in the discussion board, which is the See Now, Buy Now. And so it's not the first time that a show like this had happened where items are readily available for purchase. Moda Operandi has been doing it for years, but it's actually more that it's the season's collection available for purchase or pre-order, and it's been a limited amount of pieces. So for example, if Spring 2017 is being shown immediately afterwards on Moda Operandi, you'll be able to buy select pieces from that collection, but it is for Spring 2017, so the season that it's originally designated to be. So the one thing that, a lot of reporters are talking about and, fashion industry insiders as well, is this see now, buy now concept. Like, does it make sense to show your collection for the season that it actually is? And so what does that do to shift, consumer understanding and interest? How do you, treat your buyers and socialites and things like that? And how do you get the message out that clearly this is a collection that isn't for months to come, but it's for right now, when the majority of other designers are showing for months ahead. So it's a different way, to think about fashion, and it also can be confusing if people finally have come, to understand that whatever's being shown right now is for the upcoming season. So that just means that from a writing perspective, when you're writing about these things, you really need to pay attention. You need to read the run of show, which is this kind of thing. So like these. So I have one. Here's one from Marissa Webb. It doesn't, it could be for the following season. Doesn't even say. Here's Naeem Khan's. So the run of show has the inspiration and the list of all of the looks usually, but if the designer was doing something like, here's what's this, Bibu Mahopatras, if the designers were doing something like that, then they would say that in the run of show. It would be made known, possibly WWD would cover it in advance. So if you are looking at a collection and it's supposed to be Spring 2017 and it seems that the clothes are very, very, very fall, then maybe it is a see now, buy now kind of collection. And so now It's easy to manage. There's really just a handful of designers that are doing it, but it is something you have to pay attention to, because the worst thing you could do in that sense is people are relying on your research information, trusting you, and you write that it's a spring collection, but indeed it's a see now, buy now collection. That'll cause some confusion. So I think from a consumer standpoint, the consumer generally does default to thinking that whatever they're seeing are things that are available now for purchase. So, it's just disseminating information, making sure you have the right information, and sharing it in a way that's easily digestible for your reader. And so it definitely is confusing. You're going to have to kind of wade through the waters, and we'll see where this thing goes and takes us. But going back to the original idea of that there being two kinds of shows that will kind of stand out this season. So the see now, buy now, and then the other is the experience show. And so the prime example of that is really like Tommy at the Pier, which took over Pier, as you may have heard or read about, and it kind of created a full built out experience that goes beyond the traditional show experience of creating more of a theatrical build out with stage and construction and things that are emblematic of more luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, but Ralph Lauren has done stuff like that in the past too. But also what Tommy Hilfiger has done was by making it more, yes, it was designated for the show, but it became more of a consumer event as well, because it garnered a lot of buzz. And so people who wouldn't have been able to go to the show, just, normal consumers, fashion curious people, went to the Pier to check it out after the fact of the show, so it's still running and open and available. So I think that kind of experience extends the show and the brand and gives it a little bit more longevity in a season when things are so blip on the radar, because everything is moving so quickly and there's such a saturation of trends, colors, brands, happenings, news, that to have something more enduring than a 15-minute show can really have some lasting power for a brand. And so that's just one prime example. And so another example of the experience show is some of the designers have chosen to make things a little bit more of a destination. So it's a little bit harder to get to. You might have to take a ferry, or it's in a really remote area and you can only get there by cab or car service. Something that Alexander Wang has done. So that's just another concept to think about, in a predictor of where Fashion Week might be taking us or going in the future. So, it really is interesting. Generally speaking, though, from the consumer standpoint, from the reader standpoint, whenever something is read about a show, the audience really doesn't understand or care where the show has taken place. So unless it's something that is like that, like an very special experience that enhances and ties into the collection, like the Tommy at the Pier thing, you're not really going to want to or need to share information, wasting it on what celebrities were in attendance, or that it was in, the gallery location as part of the Skylight Studios under the IMG umbrella for New York Fashion Week. What does that mean? Most people don't know and don't really care. So the things that, they are looking for really is just the trends. They want to know what the trends are. They want to know what the colors are. If a designer has created a really cool, unique experience, then maybe you can share a little bit about that. But, most of the other stuff can be lost, and it's not really the kind of thing that consumers generally are looking for when they're getting a review about a fashion show. They're looking really for the trends, the colors, any key pieces, that kind of thing. So, with the exception of something like, again, going to more of an experience, the Marc Jacobs show, that, it had really standout-ish hair and makeup and outlandish clothing, and it created this whole mood, and this stage was very elaborate, and that's kind of his thing too. So if you're a fan of Marc Jacobs, you might expect that and kind of look for that kind of thing. But other than that, it's can be kind of left to the wayside when you're writing about pieces, because I noticed that when a lot of students do start writing about Fashion Week, they want to talk about a line snaked around the block to get into this event, or you know, it was packed, or like the audience was wrapped. To be honest, like 99% of the time, the publication that you're writing for is really not going to make a difference, and it's not really what people are looking for. It's more like the meat of the event, like why you're there. So yeah, I hope that that helps. And I guess to talk a little bit about the Backstage Beauty and some of the things that go on back there, if that can be of help, since it's so fresh in my mind, since I'm still going through all of that material. So I know some of you guys do have an interest in doing beauty, and it really is a wonderful, wonderful tie-in with fashion. They are separate but intrinsically linked, and so, you know, they ideally, when you're backstage and you hear these stories from the makeup artists, the key leads, you know, for nail, hair, makeup, sometimes even they have a skincare brand back there too, that there is a story that these people have spoken with the designer, the design team, and they've gotten information, you know, about the theme and motif of collection, and sometimes some very strong direction from the designers on what they want the makeup or the nails or the hair to look like, and sometimes it changes last minute. But as a reporter, it's really important that you know, you have the proper tools that you need when conducting an interview backstage, to you know, be able to internalize it and share it to the consumer. So basically, it's usually the same thing over and over again, and if you can find a way to share it, you know, either in a little bit more of a list formation that's easy to digest the information, or in a way that's a little bit different but still super handy and functional for the reader, that's amazing. So for the most part, whenever you do an interview backstage, it can be the same thing with a designer too, that it's like very regimented as to what they expect to be asked and what they will share. And so usually, let's say you're meeting with Maybelline's key makeup artist, Gato, was really big backstage this season. So let's say you're meeting with Gato, usually it'll be in a group interview. So the key makeup artist will really know to just talk and share the main elements. And so that's, you know, what inspired the look, what the conversation was like with the designer, what the key products are, and what the steps are applying them. And then last, if it's a really like kind of crazy look, how you might be able to tone it down and wear as like an everyday look. And that really runs the gamut of the information that's shared. And so sometimes if you're doing a different special piece, like you might be able to squeeze in and ask the key like one or two extra questions. But, you know, before you even meet with the key, you need to check in with the publicist and of course be on the list to get backstage as well, which can be very tight because capacity is limited. And so it's always great. I hardly see anyone writing in notebooks anymore as the key is speaking. One, is very hard to do, but also everyone just has a smartphone. So as the lead is speaking, everyone is just like holding out their phone as close as they can get to their face. And sometimes it's really loud. So think about a backstage. Like sometimes there's music blasting, there's people yelling, there's hair dryers blowing. So sometimes even if you are recording, you know, super close and you're listening, you might not hear everything when you play it back. So sometimes what I like to do is when I leave, I'll just like take a few quick notes of like the key product or information, just so that it's top of mind in case my recording wasn't perfect. And so also what will happen 9 times out of 10 when you get backstage is that the publicist will give you the look breakdown. And so here's one that I have from Essie backstage at Rebecca Minkoff. So it talks about basically in a nutshell what the colors were and kind of what the direction was for the collection. It's great because it has an image of it, not just of the colors. It has the list of the colors and products used, and then it has an exact breakdown of how to get it. And then at the bottom, it gives a few extra tips on like some ways to do it. This is Essie Pro Tip. So it gives, obviously it assumes that not everyone doing this is a pro. So it gives you some alternative methods to kind of do this, like special French manicure at home. And so Essie is a pro, at this. The brand and his publicists understand and know what reporters are looking for. And so if you're backstage, you get a copy of this. Sometimes if my bag's getting really full, I'll take a picture of this and throw it away because I end up with like dozens of these by the end of the season. And so usually that night or by the next day, the publicist will also email you this, and then it may have additional final looks that you can use from the backstage. So that's always really handy. But it's always exciting when you go back there and there's a really cool nail or makeup or hair look. And so sometimes some designers know that they have to have like a polished nail and like a done face, but they really don't want any makeup on that face. They really don't want nails to be done. They don't want nail art. They don't want any color in the nail. And so, for example, that happened when I went backstage with Essie for self-portrait, is that like, yes, the nail was like nicely done, but like, look at this. Like, it just looks like a plain nail, right? It's really not that fancy. So if you do want to write about this show, this brand, obviously the best thing to do is try to think about how can I encapsulate this into some kind of trend. Or, a natural nail and natural, like, good skin, dewy skin or something, it's not necessarily a trend. Like, that stuff is timeless. It's always going to be accessible. It's always going to be the ultimate ideal look. So that might not necessarily fit into that kind of piece. So if this is something that you have to feature, you have to think, how can I do this or share this information in a way that isn't a reach? And so one might be like something like this. You could talk about how this could be like the 2-minute polish nail. So all you have is like 2 minutes to do your own nails. And then all you need is to quickly put down the first base coat, one coat of Au Naturel Essie, and then finish it off with the Mad About You top coat. So that's very quick. That is literally something that you can do in 2 minutes. So like the 2-minute job interview nail, maybe, or something like that, or like 2-minute 9 to 5 nail. So something that like is applicable to most people in an everyday sense and makes sense. So it doesn't have to be part of a trend, because this really doesn't make sense to fit into that genre. It's kind of a classic look. So I hope that all makes sense to you so far. As you start to do more interviews and talk to people, sometimes it's good, to kind of let, especially in group interviews, which happen a lot in hectic scenarios like events, to kind of let the lead, the person that is being interviewed, take the lead and let them talk first and see kind of what they want to share and what they have to say. And obviously, do your research on them before you meet, and think about what kind of things your reader needs to know or you must ask. And hopefully there'll be time to do that. Think about ways that you can translate the coverage that may not be exactly in the trend genre, because once you get back there, you really aren't sure exactly what you're going to see. Sometimes you do know in advance. Like, for example, I knew exactly what I was going to see backstage for Rebecca Minkoff with Essie, because the day before, Essie had done some snaps of the test. So they obviously always do a test. Sometimes it's a couple days before, sometimes it's a couple weeks before the show. And so they had done, some Snapchat moments with Michelle Saunders, who was leading the nail the day before the show. So I was really excited because I knew what I was going to see. Again, that could always change, but it is kind of like a cool insider take. So it's always good to follow the brands and the people that you may be interviewing on Snapchat, on Instagram, just to kind of have a feel for the vibe of the brand and where they're at and what they're working on. And, it can really create a good rapport and camaraderie once you are backstage, saying like, oh yeah, so cool. I really enjoyed, the Snapchat story that you did yesterday on this. Great job. it's kind of just a nice intro into the conversation, and also shows that you have done a little bit of work and research, because when there's dozens of people rolling in and out of the backstage, it's kind of hard to stand out a little bit. So that's kind of one way you can do is use social media to your advantage in that capacity. And obviously, Essie has this hashtag Essie Love, and then they have all very smart, all of their social media channels on this press sheet. So they are glad for you, to share and to get all the right information for that too. And so there used to be a rule that you can't share anything from the backstage until the show has actually finished. And so I've noticed that in the past 1 or 2 seasons, brands actually haven't been reinforcing that. And if you are backstage and you see that the brand itself has posted something from the backstage on one of their social media channels, then it's probably totally okay to go ahead and post. You can always ask the publicist, is it all right if I post an image now from backstage? Because you never want to do anything that may bar or ban your chances of doing this again. So it's always good to be cognizant of what the proper etiquette is, especially in a backstage scenario. Sometimes too, if I'm interviewing a designer backstage and I have a piece from their collection, something of theirs, I will wear it because, again, it helps you stand out a little bit more, and it's always a good kind of intro to the conversation, a nice way to get them kind of warmed up, to the conversation as well. So another thing kind of that I wanted to share was that you guys all have experience with fashion fundamentals and textiles, so you should have a deeper understanding and good vocabulary in order to describe these things. But you may be lucky that if you go to a show, and they do have all of this information kind of in the run of show with a list. And so, for example, Naeem Khan number 20, strapless taffeta multi-layered ball gown. So if you weren't sure what the fabric was, now you know it's taffeta, and you can just always later match it up. Go to Vogue.com, look at the images, and most likely they will be in the order that they came out. So that's kind of an easy way to reference it and make sure that you get the fabrication correctly. So it's another very important thing. Just to kind of go over the finer details, like Naeem Khan, his name might be a little bit difficult to spell. So things like that, I've mentioned this to you guys in your assignments. Always double check, triple check, making sure that the name of the designer or brand is spelled 100% perfect. Also, some brands do very specific things with capitalization, punctuation. You have to get that right. For example, can you tell I have a lot of papers? So for example, if you can see this is the nail look at Tibby. So the key manicurist / founder of Jinsoon Spa is Jinsoon Choi. So as you can see here, how she spells her name, it's JIN.Soon, space Choi. So that's her full name. But the name of her spa right here is Jinsoon. And so she switched it up a little bit. So it's capital J, and then she's smashed her second name into that. And so if you're going to talk about this, you have to make sure that that's how you do it whenever you spell it. So it's just picking up on those things, making sure you're paying attention. For example, like I was backstage with Jonathan Simkai with Catwalk by TG. So Catwalk by TG, I always double check, but like they prefer to have like all of their caps capitalized, all of the letters in caps, and then also like it's European, so some of the spelling's different. So for example, this like texturizing sea salt, texturizing is spelled with an S instead of a Z. I would have just defaulted and used a Z if I hadn't, double checked. So it's just all these little nitpicky things that I know probably seem annoying, but you have to do it. It's the difference between you maintaining a job or getting a job or never getting asked to work for a publication again. Because it's, reputation, it's liability, it's sloppiness, it's little things that can be easily checked, and it's assumed that you will do that or have done that. And, editors are generally extremely busy. They don't want to take the time to always catch these things. They want to be able to rely on you to do it. So, it's something that you have to do, and that's why in your assignments, I'm going to keep reinforcing that you spell things right and points be deducted, because I swear to God, I know people have been fired for spelling designers' names wrong. And it goes to print, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it looks bad. So it's just something that you have to ingrain into your brain, know the little nuances of accent marks and spellings and things like that, because if you truly are passionate about this, you'll want to make sure your work is like 110% always. So I guess one other thing that I wanted to share with you guys is this weekend's Wall Street Journal off-duty section. And so this is always a super great way and super receptive way that people like to receive fashion-related information. And so this section, off-duty, usually, is the cultural section on the weekends of the Wall Street Journal. And the first few pages, and usually the cover page, are all fashion-related. And so this is like their quarterly roundup. So it's like 50 things that are fall-related. So whenever you start to open the newspaper, the first few pages are all fashion. And so some of them focus on like one specific item, like this sock and shoe combination, and others focus more on a trend. So this one, for example, is focusing on the trend of maximalism for fall, and talking about how you can start to try to experiment with it in your wardrobe via a brightly, colored adorned booty. And so there's different kinds of pieces. And so this is always like, people love lists. They love like 50 top looks from New York Fashion Week, or like 10 lip colors you have to try. Like, it's kind of like a layup and a no-brainer when it comes to writing fashion pieces, but it really does garner attention. People can easily follow through it. They know what to expect. I think that you want to always have your reader kind of expecting and following along, and having a feel for what kind of story they're going to get. And so this is one really great way to do it. And so we'll talk more about these kind of different structural pieces as we move more into the newspaper, magazine writing, all that stuff. But these are always really great pieces to write. And usually, if you know and you can pay attention to when these kind of pieces might be coming out with what publication, it's a really great way to get your foot in the door, because usually these are done on top of whatever else is going on, or the regular assignments that writers have with these publications. And so they might need a little extra help. It may be a really tiny piece. It may be like 2 sentences, but it can be a way to put your foot in the door, is to pitch a publication saying like, I know that, you will be having your 50 best for fall coming up soon, and I'd really love to contribute, to that kind of piece. Here's some of my ideas. I'm not sure what theme you're working with. I'd be glad to like elaborate more on that. So there's definitely ways to get writing gigs based on these kind of existing pieces. So just a really good thing to think about. Other than that, I've talked a lot. Sorry. Definitely watch all of your lectures this week, or at least listen to me speak in my monotone, tired voice. At this point, you're starting into using your books, and I structured things so that it gave you plenty of time to get into the semester and get your fashion writing book. And you can get it, used one on Amazon for fairly cheap, like $12. I've seen them. So please, please, please be sure to buy your book by now, because you'll need it going forward. Hopefully you've gotten to this point in the lecture, and please get in touch with me. Let me know in advance if something's going on with you. Remember, attendance is based on your first post by 6 p.m. in the discussion board every week. Every week we have discussion board. Every week we have an assignment. Please do not skip any of these, because it does slowly add up towards your grade. If make attempts at your assignments, your discussion boards, engage with the other students. Online classes function completely differently, and so all I know to base you on is your work. I don't know you, in a face-to-face personal level, and so speaking of that, I would like to meet you. So if you guys are available this Wednesday, the 21st, 5:45 to 6:45, I will be sitting at the Pickler, and drinks are on me. Obviously, coffee related drinks. But stop by, say hello. You know what I look like now. And let me know if you have any questions going forward with your writing. I hope I didn't repeat anything too much that I already have. But in a nutshell, Fashion Week is exciting, and it's the best time to kind of jump into the game. It's a lot at you at once, but sometimes that's the best way to learn. And thanks for listening, watching, and I'll see you guys hopefully this Wednesday.